This panel is called Identifying the Opportunities of Emerging Technologies and Applying Them to Your Enterprise. So we'll start with, can you please introduce yourself shortly?
Yeah, definitely. So thank you for hosting us. So David Talaga, product marketing for data quality and data governance at Talent, big data integration and data quality players. Thank you for being with us.
My name is Robert Prochowicz. I am a senior pre-sales consultant at MicroStrategy, business intelligence analytics platform. I work in this region, Nordics region, for many years already.
Okay. Hello, Martin Walker. I'm actually the local here. I've been living in Sweden since 2008. Just left corporate life and started a startup. Both we have a product, which is a data catalog, and also doing local consulting work around the data management space. So I've worked from being what used to be called a data analyst, now called a data scientist, through to strategic architecture, managing implementations, and so forth.
Thank you. We are discussing today the opportunities of emerging technologies and how to apply them in an enterprise. The focus today is on data management use cases. To start with, which emerging technologies do you see now moving from hype to technologies that are improving the way how we make business, decision making, or data management in that perspective? If David, you can start with this question.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for this question. It's interesting. I think that both machine learning and every single one artificial intelligence are moving from hype to real impactful technologies in enterprise. So as an example for machine learning, so a good example is in the data governance programs that you want to implement. At Talent, for instance, we use natural language processing and machine learning to capture tacit knowledge from user and steward, for example. And based on that, we can scale this to millions of records based on just a sample of data resolution error or matching stewardship campaign works that can be implemented with stewards. So it's a good example of how you can apply machine learning to make, let's say, people smarter with using smart tools. If you look at artificial intelligence, I would say that we have to be very cautious about that because behind that, you cannot. People are looking at artificial intelligence like robots and virtual people that will replace physical people, I would say. And I think we are very far from that for sure. But we still already have that kind of solutions here. So we look at ways, for instance, you can have a powerful artificial intelligence. You also have conversational agents in every systems, retail systems, online shopping systems that you can use if you go to website. But the reality is behind that, you have to make sure that you have a system of trust. Otherwise, you cannot have really predictable artificial agents that can tell you something that you don't know before. Or sometimes it can also direct you in a bad directions, like people that can be stuck in a car or using the bad directions because they are using Waze and there are bad GPS inside.
I come from analytics world, so we assume that everything is done down below. Everything is great, and the data is in good quality, and you can trust it. So it's a bit different world. But when talking about new technologies, voice assistants, all of those stuff related to Alexa, Google Assistant, Siri, that's upcoming, I think. Even for us, for analytics companies, already you can ask questions or get your reports by asking questions. What was the sales? Who was the best salesman last year? You can do that easily and get your answer. So I think that's one of those technologies that are upcoming.
I have to admit, I'm really excited by the cloud. I know it's been around for a long time, but we've just set up our own product, and the first thing we were doing was thinking, we've got a limited amount to invest. Where should we look? And rather than building your own infrastructure on site, you can look to seeing where there are already services available out in the cloud. And I think there's some fantastic stuff going on out there. If you look at the big boys, the likes of Amazon, Azure, kind of Google, there's a lot moving to kind of to the big players. And then kind of one of the technologies I think is really interesting is kind of Snowflake. Kind of if you look at how they're disrupting the oracles and the Teradata's in this space, I think they've got kind of the business case for when you look at doing things smarter rather than necessarily changing how you do things. I think is amazing at the moment. You can just get up to speed so much quicker. So I think that kind of when talking about the stuff that's happening here and now, I think the whole move to the cloud and just being far more effective in your operations is being enabled, and they're enabling you to bring the technology that was only available to the privileged few to the masses. Kind of you go onto AWS and you start looking at some of the TensorFlow algorithms that are available, and anyone can just go on and pick it up and start playing with it. It's just amazing what is there now that you need to invest millions in before. We've just started our own sort of local consultancy, so you can go and speak to people and say, we can around data management, we can bring some data and do some analytics and help you understand your landscape. You could stand up an instance of, I don't know, Snowflake with kind of Click sitting on the top. All of it sitting in the cloud with minimal investment. So I think the ability to get going with analytics, whether it be simple, low volume type data analysis, or some of the more advanced scenarios that you've talked about, I just think is phenomenal at the moment.
I think that if we can continue on that topic, so I think that what cloud can enable is really to democratize data access. I remember that before coming to the event, I saw a report from Data 2020 that said that 50% of companies declare that their employees have access to data in their company. And I think that what the cloud will change is that will enable companies to deliver data access very far easier than before. And we are building on our own tools on the cloud too, to make sure that we are relying on that trend as well, and to make sure that they can also prepare, trust, enrich data. So you quoted Snowflake, for example. So we have customers joined with Snowflakes, and that kind of new cloud data warehouse systems that you can leverage makes everybody able to even start a venture like yours, or even customers can start doing their own data services and monetize their data investment with simple and affordable cloud environments. So that's an opportunity for every company.
I think when you look at some of the other startups, there's a local company in the press, Innovia, who've just been sold off to a kind of big VC house. They've done some amazing things. Again, cloud-based, private cloud, but cloud-based services out to organizations where they do local machine learning and local text recognition, kind of voice to text. It's just amazing what it can enable you to do, and it gives, again, me as an entrepreneur a chance to sort of compete with some of the big boys in getting up and running with innovative solutions. So I think we're going to see a lot more startups kind of working in this space, coming up with new niche offerings, and I think we're going to see a lot more corporates working with startups rather than going for the big boys every time. So I'm seeing a change in the mind of buyers. I left Nordea back in May, and we were looking at small companies now. Kind of, we've been talking to some of the big banks in the UK, and they're saying we want to work with startups. We're not necessarily just going, it's safe to go for IBM, Informatica, So I think it's really going to change the vendor landscape as well.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question. How do you see the application of emerging technologies versus maintaining legacy technologies? Should we always use the recent technology, or traditional solutions still have a place under the spot? Martin?
I think this is a really interesting question. Again, I've come from a banking environment where you've got systems that have been around for, I won't say hundreds of years, but it feels like it. You've got kind of the systems have evolved like onions, and you've built complexity on complexity on complexity. And I think anyone who works in a large corporate will recognize that story when you've come from a place that's multi-jurisdiction, it's grown up through M&A, and you can't just replace the legacy overnight. I think the challenge that organizations have is they don't understand how the legacy works. The people who used to work on the legacy, many have retired or are close to retirement, and so people understand their own little silo, but they don't understand how it fits together. And therefore the ability to transform and move to the kind of all these advanced analytics solutions is hampered by the ability to actually get the right data quality. If you have a look in kind of recently, there's in the press is about Danske Bank with an anti-money laundering fine because there were transactions that were going through that weren't being appropriately screened. That's because I don't know anything about the inside of Danske Bank, by the way, but if you look at them, it's just like, do they understand their data landscape? Do they understand where transactions originate? And are they going through the suitable processes? And in most organizations, the answer is no. So you can start thinking about robotics and and blockchain and all of the new technologies. But unless you can get the basics right with your legacy, then you won't be in business. So I think legacy is going to have a part to play in most corporates for the foreseeable future. There's going to be the bolt-ons where you can start tinkering around the edges and start putting in new analytics-driven systems. But in my mind, one of the big challenges is how do you use analytics to understand your internal data landscape in the same way that we always talk about using sales analytics or customer relationship management to actually understand our customer landscape and who's buying what from us. So I think that's really where the challenge is at the moment.
From our side, I think that the challenge between legacy and modern technologies is probably in the perceptions of legacy technology, which is if you look at ERP, CRM system like Salesforce or SAP, they are taking care of business processes, but they are not really taking care of data management. So as a consequence, every data is stuck in silos, and the challenge here is really to separate the data from the core processes of these enterprise systems. But for that, you need to make sure that really you have the tools, the platforms, the technologies to do it, or the methodologies. Some of them are using some exchange data layers, like we have French customers, a big retail company, that taking care that let the legacy systems there and just create an exchange data layer to create and do some kind of advanced analytics on top of it. And we have some other companies that say, okay, let's just extract everything in a data lake, and then from that data lake, let's create new use case. Let's the data scientists create new data models to try and test a new predictive approach.
I've been working for a big retailer for a few years, and there was a project to replace an ERP system to something new. And with those big enterprises, it's like Boeing 747 cruising at the cruising altitude, and you want to replace the engine. That's a difficult thing because the plane is going, so it doesn't stop, and you cannot stop the business to replace the system. So you need so much investment, so much money, people. So no one really wants to take this challenge. There was this case with Lidl recently that they just scrapped the SAP project for, I don't know, millions, hundreds of millions of euro. They said, no, we will stay with the old system. So it's really challenging, and that's why at many organizations there are still old technologies, even if the new ones are much better, faster, smarter, better. But the process of changing, that's the problem.
I think that's kind of, again, in the banking industry, which is where I've come from, you look at the continual pressures. There's changing front office business, because there are some products that used to be highly profitable, and the regulators come along and said that's an antisocial product, and therefore they put huge amounts of capital add-ons, or they change the kind of the way that product is viewed. So capital markets functions are shutting down certain business lines. And on the other side, you've got the regulator who is saying we need to see more transparency in what you've got. You've then got a third dimension, which is core banking systems or data warehouses are being changed. So you're in an organization where there's a huge amount of change going on. And use the analogy of a 747. These are businesses that are operating, that have to stay alive and keep on operating without collapsing their critical national infrastructure. So it's about how do you understand what is changing at any point in time, so then you can manage the downstream effects. You've got GDPR in the non-banking world, where people are saying we need to understand how our personal data is being used, and there's huge punitive fines if you're unable to demonstrate that. So again, you need to understand what customer data is where in a changing world. So I think it's really important to get on top of the legacy, so you can start planning your way out of it, rather than flying blind and just say, let's go in and buy some new technology and slap it in because something didn't work. Hopefully that will save some of those SAP type moments where you discover, oh, we've just discovered a whole new part of our infrastructure we didn't know existed. That's just doubled the budget. How many people have seen that? It's amazing how it still happens.
Thank you. Technology is moving so fast. How can organizations stay ahead, or can they? Robin?
Yeah, I mean, especially now you have, also because of the cloud, you have so many startups, new ideas, new software, new solutions are popping up every day. Maybe 1% or 10% of them will succeed. Like there will be next Salesforce, there will be next Workday. I don't know. There are many solutions like that, but the point is you don't know which one will win, which one will lose. So important thing is to be prepared, to be ready to integrate with any of them. So important thing is to try to stay as open, as ready for integration as possible, to have APIs, to have connectors to those new technologies, to use standard protocols, JSON, REST, whatever. When you have that, then you are safer, because if you see that something is really taking up, getting a market success, you can go for this technology, you can use it. But if you are closed, you don't have capabilities to connect to anything you like, then you will have a problem.
I think from my point of view, you mentioning integration, so I will answer in 3 points. So first is technology. So at Talents, we saw that trend a few years ago. So we acquired a company called Restlet, which is really an API-driven company, just to extend the way we can leverage data management with data services to connect to other kind of systems that we didn't know before, and that the new and predictable system that will come in the future. Just to make sure that when the customers are investing in platforms like our platforms, they be ready for the future. That's for the technology. For the process side, I think that you mentioned about. I think that people need to be agile, and it's a buzzword being agile. But if you come back to the agile, I mean, it's there 16 years ago when the first agile manifesto has been written. It's a traditional model that has been developed for software development by Ken Schwaber, Jeff Sutherland in 2001. But let's take these principles to smart small in very small projects, but that can really deliver fast, so that you can really react more quickly. I think that I saw in one of the presentations this morning something I totally don't agree. Say, data management process is a never-ending story. So I think that at certain point of time, you have to say, is there a business outcome or not? What is the purpose? What is the value of what has been delivered? If not, then choose something else and try fast, because people will react differently. And then the third point will be around the people. I think it's also about the culture of change, the culture of adopting new technologies. New generations like X, Y, Z, YZ probably more won't have this kind of problem because they are keen on changing apps, changing technology very fast. But also we need to have that culture of change. So companies that want to react fast need to have that kind of culture of change as well.
Okay, this is going to sound very cliche, but I think the job of IT is they obviously need to understand how their business operates. They need to get closer to the business to understand what the pain points are, and they need to be scanning the market to understand what are the capabilities that are out there that can enable them to support and add genuine business value. I think there's also the case of you need to be doing proof of concepts with the business. You mentioned the culture side of things. That's far easier said than done in many industries, where it's just IT, that's boxes and wires, let them get on with it. So I think it's about how do you play that broker role. I think when you actually get to the platforms themselves, there's going to be re-platforming. There always will be. I think you need to think about which platforms are candidates for replacement. It comes back to you need to understand your architecture and have an architecture strategy. If you look at blockchain as an example, great potential, but is it there yet? Would you go and put a mission critical system on blockchain? Probably not. But you may be doing something now that could be blockchain enabled in the future. So you do need to plan for potential outcomes as and when you go through your current system replacement projects. So I think it's about, one is from an architecture perspective, getting in control, back to understanding what you've got. That's down to having a good basic hygiene, such as sort of cataloging your assets, ranging from your applications to your data flows, and understanding how things work. I think, as you said, sort of putting in place some of the plumbing so you can easily or more easily switch things in and out. It's not exactly plain sailing, but the more API route you can take, the better. And I think it's just making it, being in control of things rather than reacting to things as they come, and just trying to change that culture in the way you work together with your business partners.
Come to Data 2020 Summit as soon as you can.
Thank you. All right. How can we choose the right technology to use? Any metrics? David, if you...
I think that's the question of what is the right technology. I think the right technology that will be the one that people use and that deliver business results. And I think that's probably technology where that really understand the value of and how it can be used by different variety of people. It's not anymore technology is not only managed by and used by IT. It's used by a variety of people. So technology has to be simple, powerful, to be in the hand of everybody. So we saw this morning in the presentation, people say, okay, data can be into hands of everybody in these rooms. But for that, you need to have simple and modern apps that can really enable you, like data catalog, but embrace the data to search, crawl, and consume the data very easily. So the technology, the right technology for me, would be the one that deliver business results and that really is keen on, is UI friendly, I would say too.
Yeah, you need to. I work I'm a pre-sales consultant, so I often compete with our competitors, vendors, to get the customers. So I see different styles, how the companies are choosing me or my competitor. Sometimes there are like 500 questions, sometimes there are POCs, sometimes they weight the price more than technology, sometimes technology more to the price. I mean, I also was working for many regions. I've been working in Russia, Middle East, and here in Nordics. I like how it happens here because it's that there must be a common agreement. So many people decide, business, IT, management. So they need to come to the common agreement which technology, which solution they are going to choose to buy. And it's very democratic. So I think I like the style of Nordic countries, how they come to this conclusion.
Well, I'm a big fan of, or a firm believer in, if you can't measure it, then you can't manage it. So when you start talking about are there any metrics, it comes back to my previous point, which is you need to understand what your business metrics are and what the problem is you're trying to solve, whether that be total cost of ownership, whether it be increased penetration in a particular market segment, or whatever you're looking at. So I think you need to start off with the business case itself. Then I'd say the implementation of the technology itself is the relatively easy bit. The two things that are the really, really, really hard bit is, one is plumbing it in and making sure that you can get it to work with the upstream and downstream processes. And then the second thing is getting the whatever change management activities you need to put in place in order to make sure the data is correct in it. If I cast my mind back years ago to a IT service management world, and there it was all about, okay, we go and pick a new technology, the client went for the greatest technology, but they completely failed in the process side. So instead of having control over their data around what are the accepted number of, top 10 fields in your drop-down list, it became a free-for-all. So you end up with 300 fields in your drop-down list because everyone would add a new categorization every time they could think of something. And that obviously impacts all of your downstream processes, where we then get hit as consumers of data in the analytics space. So one of the things that, again, coming with my financial services background, is if you've got $100 to spend, I'd be saying spend 80 on the front office, trying to fix the sort of the upstream problems, spend 10 on the sort of the governance, the cataloging, the actual getting control of your landscape, and 10 on sort of downstream analytics platform change. I think there's this sort of sense of security that you go and do a re-platforming exercise and you think all of a sudden you're going to make the world a better place, but it's a data problem, not so much a technology problem in a lot of cases. So I think before you go off and say, let's go and migrate all of our data warehouses, let's think about what's the problem we're trying to solve. Are we just trying to reduce our unit cost, of which there could be a very good business case, of which your metrics are the cost savings, or are we actually trying to improve our data, in which case re-platforming a database may not be the best option.
Okay, thank you. That was all the questions. Let's give it up for applause for the panel.
Thank you.